Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on this lovely day. We are here with Naomi Fox Reyna, and we're going to talk about astrology. And so the whole concept I love with astrology is healing with the stars. And who is no more of a star than Naomi? She is an astrologer and a human design teacher. So she teaches about both astrology and human design. And she's been practicing both for a very long time. So you were into astrology before astrology was even cool, right?
Yeah, definitely. I had to dive in so that I could be the teacher for all the people that are finally waking up to it.
Yes, yes. So could you tell me a little bit about your perspective and how you got into astrology and kind of like what makes you a little bit different than other astrologers?
Absolutely, yes. So I got into astrology. I was going through a divorce, and my whole world had just been splayed wide open. And I was looking to just understand how I got to where I was. I knew that the path that had gotten me to that moment wasn't going to be the path that I wanted to continue on. And I went and got my hair cut in the new town that I had just moved to after divorce, and met this person. I hadn't known her before, and she was really into astrology. And so while she's cutting my hair, she's like, "So I'm into astrology. Do you like, what day were you born?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm a Sagittarius, but I'm not really into that stuff. Like, it just never feels like it fits me." And she's like, "Okay, do you know the minute you're born?" And I was like, "Yeah, doesn't everybody?" And she's like, "No."
Everybody.
And so she pulls up my chart and she's like, "Oh, of course you know the minute you're born. Your moon is in Virgo." And then she proceeds to tell me all of this really personal stuff about myself that, like, I don't tell people I even had known for 10 years. And like, I felt completely exposed, totally intrigued. And I basically demanded that she tell me everything she knows about it, because I didn't understand how, from just the minute that I was born and the location and the date, that she could know all this very deeply personal stuff about myself and
Mm.
explain things that I had no explanation for any other way, and even put things into words about how my mind works or how my heart works that I didn't even have words for. And just that first interaction completely changed my life. Of course, she had a client for life after that. And so I just would keep going back to her. And every time I would return, I would ask her all the questions, and we would go over everybody else's charts, go over my kids' charts, my ex-husband's chart. Once I started dating guys, we went over their charts, and she could accurately give a rundown of, like, "Oh yeah, you'll have great communication with this guy. It'll feel really easy, but you'll feel no attraction to him. But of course, he'll be totally attracted to you." And that's like how it would go. And I'm like, "How do you know this?" And the more that I saw how much value it had, the more I just knew I needed to learn. So I dived in. And I went and I looked through all the dark recesses of the internet when you Google, like, "I want to learn astrology," and just picked through all of that and was able to, through my great and powerful God, be able to piece together all the different parts. And once I started doing sessions with people, I was invited to, "Please, please, could you teach this?" And then after teaching it for a little while, it was, "Please, please, can you certify in this? I want to be a light-filled astrologer like you." And now there are 22 certified light-filled astrologers, including you. And
Yay.
there are so far 84 students have gone through this. And we're just about to open up the fifth cohort for the program.
Ooh, that's so exciting. I want to talk a little bit about what makes astrology light-filled versus what's the difference between light-filled astrology and what of those run-of-the-mill people find on the side of the road.
100%. So light filled astrology means that it's filled with light. And this was a term that just came in through pure inspiration. I was just sitting there one day and I felt distinctly told, like, "By the way, what you do is called light filled astrology." And I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, that is like the best distinguishing word for it." Because when something is filled with light, when light emanates from the inside of it, you can see so much more accurately. Like, if you imagine an object in the middle of a dark room, and it's completely black, you can't even see the object. You don't know what you're looking at. And if you just shine a little bit of light on it, you have these really over exaggerated shadows, and you have a lot of distortion, and you don't even fully really appreciate the shape or size or dimensions of the object that you're trying to look at. But if you fill the room with light, if light is everywhere and you can walk around and you can see every angle of this object, you can understand it perfectly. And there's no part of it that doesn't have light. Just like with us, the parts of us that we try to hide because we're like, oh, I don't really like this part of myself. Like, I'm just going to put this away. Like, I don't want anybody knowing about this. If we try to put it in the dark, we can't see it accurately, and we misjudge and think, oh, I talk too much, or I'm too shy, or I'm so loud, or I'm not loud enough. Like, just in that one little, like, what is your volume, and is it appropriate, and do you feel shame over it? Anything that you feel shame over in your personality that keeps coming up throughout your life, I guarantee you is one of your gifts with the volume turned up too loud or too quiet. And that's all that it is. And with more light, you can see what's going on, and you can heal it, and you can move into what you are supposed to be, like objectively supposed to be.
Yes, beautiful. Do you find that when you were doing sessions, I don't know if you still are, but when you
Yes.
were doing, you are, okay. So do you find that when you do a session that if it's their person's first time, that they feel identified with their sun sign? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yes. I've done sessions for people all the way from like professional astrologers to like people who don't even know what a moon sign is. And so there's a lot of teaching during the session. They just knew that they needed to book a session with me. And so, yes, I've had lots of sessions with people that are like, oh, I'm a Virgo, but I don't resonate with that, or whatever. And so we're able to identify, well, you only have one placement in Virgo, but you've got like 7 placements in Leo. No wonder you don't feel very Virgo. Or somebody who's like, oh, I'm a Gemini, and then we pull their chart and they've got like a whole bunch of Gemini, or they've got these other parts of them that are expressing that they didn't even know were there. And so being able to show that there are multiple facets to you, nobody is exclusively just one energy. And so being able to really there's an illumination that comes when you're like, oh, by the way, like you might be a Gemini sun, but did you know that your moon is in Leo? And
Wow.
Emily is commenting, she says, I'm a Leo,
Yeah.
but I don't resonate with that completely as well. And
Yes.
what's so fascinating is like Emily might have just her sun sign in Leo and have a whole bunch of stuff in other signs. But also I notice consistently, especially with Leo and Aries women specifically, both fire signs, that if you grew up in a conservative religious culture, it is less likely that you're going to resonate with your fire energy, because fire is typically more masculine and aggressive and loud and all of that. And so I see all the time, because I attract a lot of women into my space who were raised in a conservative religious culture, which is a good portion of America, to be honest. Like most of us had a huge heavy influence on that wherever we grew up, whether it was in our actual family or just the society at large. And so it was like, you can't be fiery, you can't be dynamic, you can't be too powerful, you can't be too loud. How dare you try to make yourself the center of attention? And so we're like, oh, that is just not part of me. And so we put it away. And so I see a lot of specifically Leo women that are not living true to their Leo self, or they're like, I'll take the parts of Leo that are acceptable and shine that. And obviously, Emily, I don't know if that's what you're doing, but I'm just giving an example that this is something I see very consistently across the board.
I have so much Gemini in my chart, and when I remember the first time that I was like, I was in chiropractic school and somebody was like, oh, I totally identify with the Leo trope or whatever, and I was like Googling up when is my birthday and what am I in, and I read Gemini and I was like, they got the worst one. But I
Gemini
didn't
is an
feel like
interesting
it made any
energy for
sense.
sure. And we usually misjudge our own sign the harshest.
Yeah.
But Gemini is an interesting one, because like it's generally regarded as the most hated sign of the zodiac. And so it's like, well, why is that? It's like, why are all the hate memes about Geminis and Scorpio and Aries? Like they're like all like kind of there where people just misunderstand them, where the Gemini energy has that two-faced quality. But what it
Mm.
is that you have the ability to show the face to the world that people want. You're like, oh, I'm aware that this is more palatable, so I'm going to show up this way. And then there's the other reality that if you only show what they want, what the world wants, that this other reality has to exist somewhere. And so when it flips, and it's really dramatic to everybody else, where to you, you're like, what? Like, that's just the way it is. But other people are having such a different experience. And so the Gemini is here to learn the lesson of being able to say what needs to be said, and
Mm.
being able to like represent accurately like the whole picture, because you can still give the front to the world that people want to experience, but also be able to integrate that shadow piece in a way that it doesn't become a whole other monster that takes over. And so,
Yeah.
like, we all have our things that we need to work through. It's just the experience other people have of Geminis when that flips is so abrupt that I think that's why people have such a difficult time with Geminis.
Yeah, I just thought that everybody hated their own sign, but at first, when they first learn about it.
I thought, I was like, I'm not a Sagittarius, because everything called them obnoxious and like too loud. And I can be loud for sure, but it turns out I have a Virgo moon that keeps me very in check. And so I don't really do the obnoxious thing. I do a lot of other aspects of Sagittarius, but like I can see how the balance of my chart explains why I, quote, never really resonated with being a Sag. But
Mm.
Sag is another fire sign. And growing up in a conservative Christian area, like in, well, my household, I grew up in Denver, but it definitely was communicated like this fiery aspect of yourself isn't really accepted. And so I learned to put that away, especially being a mutable sign. Like Gemini is mutable, Sagittarius is
Mm.
mutable. And so we're good at kind of adapting to the situation, which is beautiful, but it's eventually going to come out. So um yeah, Emily says I
Yes.
wasn't religious until I was 12. I can be fiery, but it's gotten me in trouble, so I learned to hide it. And you have a Libra moon and a Gemini ascendant. Yeah, so you probably move more, Emily, into your air qualities, your air sign energy, which is more mental than passionate. And so it's like, cool, I can live here. This is acceptable. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Not
love
everybody wants a Leo
this.
woman around because you guys are so passionate and I love
So
it.
much.
One of my best friends is a Leo.
So I talk a lot about how I use astrology to heal and to work with like healing energies and as a reflection of that mirror of like who we are inside and what that subconscious is telling us. And so can you speak a little bit about some of the experiences that some of your clients have had while you were working with them and what they said to you? And yes, I love this is my favorite part.
Absolutely, yes. Like I have this one client, she's a Virgo sun, and she sustained a tremendous amount of abuse when she was a child, and she's an Aries moon. And when we first started working together, she was like, I just don't feel any of that. Like, I don't have any connection to an Aries moon. Like, when you describe that, it doesn't reflect with me. So, we did some work and just seeing what was objectively there as opposed to subjectively, instead of like, well, how does the inside of you feel? Like, how do you feel that you filter your emotions? Like, that has value to an extent, but it can be helpful to be like, well, you are an Aries moon. And so your inner world should be extremely passionate, very fiery, very intense, very strong emotions. And she's just kind of like, And so talking with her about that and facilitating some work for her to connect to her Aries moon, she completely changed, because all of the sudden she was able to have this connection to her innermost self that was totally severed from her young childhood. And that was necessary for her to survive, because the healing work that we need as adults is not necessarily from the original incident that happened. It's from the
Mhm.
compensatory behaviors that we adopted to deal with the original incident. The incident itself, yes, was terrible, but where we get into trouble is when we adopt behaviors to be able to cope. And that's usually what we're doing our healing work around. Like,
Yeah.
if we hide because who we are isn't acceptable, our greatest healing work isn't necessarily around the original incident that made it clear that we needed to hide. It's around being seen, because we now have trauma around being seen because we spent decades trying not to be seen. And so being able to see just what is and the contrast of how you're showing up in reality your chart isn't necessarily dictating who you are. It's a map of the most highest expression of who you can be. And so whenever I see somebody that is not behaving at all like their chart, and I've definitely seen it, it is always consistently aligned with anxiety and distortion and unhappiness and broken relationships and difficulty connecting in an intimate way, because you're not being who you actually are. You're being an alternate version. And I've seen people be several degrees off of their natural version, and their lives are kind of a train wreck, and not from a place of judgment, from a place of like, oh sweetie, I'm so sorry, that seems so hard, like, are you okay? Not as much like, I found it, I see what's wrong with you. It's this like deep compassion for like, can like, what level of love and how do you need to be loved to be coaxed back to who you chose to be when you came?
Yeah. Yes. Beautiful. I love this. Oh my goodness, I love this work. This is great. This is so great. So I had been learning astrology for like 10 years, and I chose to be in your program because I was piecing it all together, and I wasn't really, okay, I'll be honest, I wasn't really trying that hard. I would just like listen to this podcast, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, I have Jupiter over here. And the podcast I was listening to was very generalized because he wasn't a big like, let's get really specific. It was these are the generalized energies that are going on, and here's how to work with them. But it was very, very general. So I had trouble going, oh, Jupiter is where you're lucky, right? Like that's not a good, that wasn't like, okay, it was Jupiter is like expansion and religion and stuff like that. And so I had a really hard time even reading my own chart. And so I just kind of like put it by the wayside. But I did choose to go and become a Light-Filled Astrologer. And this was so incredibly powerful. Like I had all the little bits and pieces that I'd gained from over the years, but you put it together so, so beautifully in such a logical manner. It just has this like flow and ease to it that I was like, later on when I was creating some of my own courses, I was like, oh my gosh, Naomi is a genius because she was able to do this and to make it look so effortless. And I'm here like banging my head against my laptop. So I know how much work went into that.
It was an inordinate amount of work to give birth to this entire program, but it's the best of what was inside of me. And like, I am so proud of it. Like, and my Virgo moon and Virgo midheaven, like I don't do anything that's not tremendously top notch. It's just the way it is. So thank you so much. I really, really sat with it, and I looked at the energies of how do I teach this in a way to somebody who doesn't know anything about astrology and somebody who's been kind of in and out in an inconsistent or unstructured way. Like, how do I help both types of people to be able to start and just go down the path? So yes.
Nailed it. Totally nailed it. So you are offering a new cohort that starts next Wednesday.
Yes, Wednesday the 4th. And that's when the content drops. And the way that the program is structured is it's a 12-week program, and you get the content starting on Wednesday the 4th. And every Wednesday after that, you'll get new content that is the whole week's worth of information for you and videos and everything. And then we meet on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern or 10 a.m. Pacific every Tuesday for 90 minutes, and it's recorded. So if you can't make it, everybody pre-submits their questions and I answer questions live, whatever questions you have. And we go over we go over charts, we go over specifics, we can really dive deep into things, and you can listen as other people ask their questions, which of course, like I deeply love, like I love facilitating it, but I also love participating in things like that, because you're not even going to think of the questions that other people are going to ask and be like, oh, that is a great question, I didn't even think about that. And then you can review the content forever, and you'll have access to the live recordings to review again and again. But the live recordings are contained only to the cohort. So you're not going to be there working through some current issue in your life that's really hard throughout the 12 weeks, like asking questions, and then have somebody 2 years later that you don't know, like watching you work through this hard issue. Like that's 10 out of 10 important to me. I have enough Scorpio in me that I'm like, I'll be vulnerable, but I need to know who I'm being vulnerable with. So like I've been in programs where I've been vulnerable and working through something. And when I work through something, I bring it all out to the surface, and I probably look like I'm more of a hot mess than I actually am, because I'm really dealing with all of it on the surface. And then later to realize like, oh my gosh, other people can see that. Like, I'm not okay with this. So I didn't want to do that in my program. And so it's only contained to the small-ish cohort that we have. It's big enough for diversity, but also small enough that you can feel safe opening up about real issues, because I'm sure you saw in your cohort, and it happens in sessions, you get to the heart of real stuff when you're doing astrology with people. So it'll be like, tell me about your relationship with your mom and how that's playing out in your intimate relationship
Mm,
now, because your moon and your Venus are squaring each other. So are you
mm.
okay? And it just, boom, gets right into it.
It does. It really does. I remember in my cohort, I was asking this question about like, well, my Aries Vesta is doing this or whatever. And you're like, no, your Aries Vesta is mad because you don't care about you. And I was like, oh, dang it. I don't want to.
Yeah. Hmm.
But
Yep.
that's the work. That's what we do in this work of being an astrologer. So the next cohort starts on next Wednesday, and where can people sign up with the link that I'm going to provide?
Yeah.
Um, but I have a special gift for anyone who signs up with my link. It is called Healing with the Stars, and it is how to go beyond, above and beyond that regular, this information that Naomi, this like deep information that Naomi is providing, and go into how do I have a conversation with my Mars or my Vesta, and how do I heal through that on my own? Or if you are already a healer for others, how do I use astrology to have them have that conversation with their moon, with their Mars, wherever it is that is going on there? And so that is for free. And I'm giving away one session with me, if you choose to go with my link to get this wonderful, amazing program. So
Love this so much. That is so awesome and so generous, because as you know, we talk about a little bit about how to do this in a healing way, but that's not the bulk of the program. So I love that you're taking it so much deeper and facilitating that healing, because I can't include all of that in this because it's already so much. It's
it's
already
already so
so robust of a program. So yeah.
wonderful. What is one thing where can people find you, first of all, Naomi?
So you can find me. I have a really excellent Facebook group, Light-Filled Astrology and Human Design. It's very active. I think we're at about 2,400 members in there, and lots of great discussions, lots of learning, totally free, of course. I have a free mini course for people that just are like, I don't know anything at all. And you can go to illuxology.com, ILLUXOLOGY.com, or to learnastrology.com goes to my homepage, because that's easier to say if you're not just clicking on a link. So learnastrology.com will take you there. And then to learn all the details about this course, definitely go to the link that Jaye Anne has here in the comments here, and be able to get all the details and even get your spot, because space is very limited. And if this is the right time, if this is the moment, and you're like, you're getting that yes within you, don't hesitate. Reach out to Jaye Anne with questions, reach out to me with questions, and we'd be happy to help you.
Yes, I love it. What's one thing you want to leave everybody with? One sentence, one phrase.
If you understood the power that comes from knowing who you truly are on a divine level and how that would impact the rest of your life, you would move heaven and earth to understand that very basic thing.
Mm.
Because there is nothing in your life that is not positively impacted by you truly knowing who you are.
Love it. Enough said. Enough said. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Naomi, for being here with me today. I really appreciate it. And thank you for being there through all the technical craziness that we were having in the beginning.
It's
And
all perfect.
It's all perfect. And I truly appreciate you for creating this incredible course and letting me be part of this. So thank
Oh,
you.
you're so wonderful. Thank you so much, Jan. I love doing this. I appreciate the time.
Awesome. Well, all right. Well, everyone have a good day.